Hi, this is episode 3 of Rory's Table Tennis Topics. I have 4 new guests. I have Gavin Maguire, former Irish number 1, 6-time European Championship player and 7 times in the World Championships. Currently owns Table Tennis Provider and is a full-time coach. Hello, Gavin.
Hi, Rory. You must have been reading that off a sheet, were you?
I was, yeah. Easiest way to do it. And then Eli Baraty, ITTF qualified and high performance international coach, founder and director of UTTCT and EBAT. Hi, Eli. And Andy Wilkinson, current England number 5 veteran, former number 1 junior, and he's pursuing a part-time, I think, table tennis coaching career. Right, Andy. And then, last but not least, Will Michell, who is from my club, Wilkinson Spinners Table Tennis Club, and he's one of my former junior players, Sussex County player at various levels, cadet, junior, and senior. And I'm your host, Rory'S, Irish number 2 veteran and coach at Wilkinson Spinners Table Tennis Club. So we've got 4 kind of topics to discuss today. It's all centered around the topic of table tennis coaching, from different players and coaches' kind of perspective. So the first one is catering for players with different motivations in the same session. This actually came up a little bit on the Coaching Table Tennis England webinar yesterday, which was kind of advertised after I advertised this, but it was quite interesting. So I'm going to ask how the question to Eli first. How would you cater for, say, the social player, the player who wants to become the next England number 1, and the kind of in-between people, people who come along to just have a chat? How would you kind of manage that in your session, Eli?
That's a good question. I think it's a really tough one, and also depends on the environment you're in. So let's say if a group of players walked into my club as such, and I've got, as you said, someone wanting to be a world champion, recreational and so forth. The first thing I try and do is understand where they are. So if someone, are you talking about a group that I'm already working with or a group that are completely new?
Yeah, say it's a group that you're already working with. Yeah, they're different abilities.
Okay, so if I'm working with a group and they all have different needs and requirements, then generally I do this anyway, and it's quite simple because you already know the players. So once you know the players, you can give them precise and bespoke kind of training for them to work on. So for example, each one of my players would have a diary. Each one of my players, I would understand their goals, their vision, their target, and then I would try and cater for their specific needs. So it's not really rocket science. It's just them understanding themselves better rather than just you dictating as a coach. So for example, if you come into the session, okay, everyone, we're going to do Falkenberg today, and then everyone does it, then it doesn't quite work out because you've got, let's say, a monkey, an elephant, and then a bear, and so you can't teach them all to climb a tree and eat a banana. Each one needs to be catered for. So it's very important that they understand themselves as well, and I think that's a big mistake. A lot of the times, the coaches dictate instead of teaching the player how to understand themselves, and that's 1, by you watching them, taking notes, and observing them, and 2, also they do the same. So you record them, or they record themselves, and then they take notes, and then you can work together to make a tailor-made coaching session for them, even if it's a group.
Is it that they've all got their own diary, which they keep together at home, they bring it with them each time, or you keep all of their diaries, or you've got one massive diary with everybody in it? How does it work?
That's good. Again, it depends on your circumstances. Some clubs might say, okay, well, we can keep everyone's diaries at the club. Some coaches might say, I want you guys to be responsible for your own diary, take it home. So it depends on the situation, and you have to try and find out.
Do you do all of these, or do you just mainly do one of those ways of doing it?
Sorry?
You have one method, or do you vary the method depending on the group that you're working with?
Generally, I vary the method, and it depends on where I'm based. So when I was at Harefield and I was a full-time base, it was a lot easier for me because I could put like on a poster on the wall. I could have it in front of you, and as soon as they walk in the hall, they know where they are. They can look at the board and they can go, right, this is my session, and they can really take care of themselves. But if you're working in a club once a week and then you've got different people coming in and stuff, then you potentially want to try and encourage each player to have their own diary or their own set of knowledge of where they want to go, and then you can cater for that. So it has to be varied. I have
tried stuff where I've got kind of notepads for each player. And, you know, you bring them out and it's all great and you do it for 1 or 2 sessions and you get a few bits and pieces. But then you kind of think it becomes a bit of a chore because it takes time. Some of them are really slow. You know, you're asking them to write down their goals for the session or just generally. And I don't know, if you're already seeing them 2 hours a week, it kind of depends how often you're seeing people. But if you're only seeing them 2 hours a week, it can take away some of your time. And if you give them work, like kind of homework to do, they often don't bother doing it. You know, I think especially the kind of people who come along for a social session and to see their friends. And okay, the thing is, some of them are actually quite good players and maybe even better than the people who are actually keen to really, really improve. So it's a tricky one. How would you manage that?
It is a tricky one, and you have to do your very best to try and find the solutions. I mean, obviously, I've worked in clubs, I've worked in schools, I've worked in academies, and I've had all the different scenarios. The easiest scenario would be when you're working with the national team. You know, it's quite easy. Everyone's kind of on the same goal and the same pathway.
Yeah, that would be a lot easier.
But like you said, for yourself, working in a club, it becomes a lot more difficult, and you have to try and do your very best to try and understand each player and give what you can. I mean, you're never going to be able to please everyone, especially if you're one-man army. But the most important thing is once you start to teach them to empower themselves, then it's down to them if they want to write down or not, or if they have the time, or if they can do it before or after. There's always solutions. You just have to persevere, really.
Yeah, and I think maybe kind of getting the opinions of each player as to what they would like the session to be like.
Yes.
It's not an easy one. I'll go on to Gavin next. What would your approach be to kind of get different players of different motivations and ability levels involved in the same session?
Yeah, I think I'd probably echo a few things that Ellie said there, but I think the key really in the beginning is you have to understand what the goals of the players are. I think it's already been said, but I mean, you can't run generic sessions. Okay, if you have a national team, you can run a fairly generic session. But let's say we're in a club environment and, like you said, all different kind of levels and abilities and goals. You've got to tailor exercises to suit who you're playing with. You know, if I've got one kid that's in the national team, but he's got an adult who maybe used to be quite good, can block, but not interested in practicing hard or whatever, you've got to tailor the situation around what you have. You know, if that guy's a good match player, that's going to be good experience for my 15-year-old that's trying to be in the national team or whatever, you know. So it's trying to tailor your practice around it if you're in a difficult situation. And I think being the para coach in Ireland has taught me a lot about that because, you know, obviously in para there's so many varying abilities, varying disabilities, and you've just got to be on your toes and think of ideas absolutely all the time to manage that. And it does make for a more difficult session. If you want it to be good and you want people to enjoy it, it makes it really difficult for the coach, and you've got to be on your toes and 100% concentrated, 100% changing things all the time. But I think it's very doable. And the only other thing I'd add probably would be that if it is your own club or your own situation, group of players that know you, they know what your values are as a coach and they know what your principles are in the club. And I don't think they are going to take away from the session. You know, if someone is put on with a player and they know that player has a certain goal, they're going to try and help them to achieve that, you know. And then they know that after that practice drill or whatever it may be is done, they may move on to a game with a friend or whatever, you know. So
yeah, I think managing different abilities is probably easier, but managing different motivations is probably harder because, you have some people that come along, they want to just play games. Some people that just want to have a hit, but informally. Some people who are happy to do your drills. You know, the coach's motivation may not be the same as that of the player. I mean, from my point of view, I want people to kind of come along to the sessions, improve, do drills or whatever, you know, engage in the session and try to improve themselves. But not everybody fits into that framework. So not everybody necessarily focuses down and does what kind of is kind of expected of them. But, you know, I mean, have you anything to say that how you would manage that kind of a situation? Or?
Well, I guess this might be a bit of a cop-out, but I guess if it was a situation, I would be trying to segregate the groups to a certain amount. You know, I would be trying to keep those like-minded players together in one group and the other like-minded players in another group. And if I don't have a situation where I can, that's what I was just going to say. If I don't have the ability to make two different sessions, I will split groups in one session and run two sessions side by side. If I feel that that's the best way to get the most out of everyone and give everybody what they want, then I will absolutely, I'll segregate the session. Yeah,
because I mean, we're kind of trying to help kind of your standard club coaches in this kind of show today, I think, because for example, you may not have enough players to split people into different sessions or, you know, availability of the players. Some of them just want to play once a week. You might only have 10, 20 players in your entire club in terms of juniors. So that's a good idea. Like, so you might have two kind of sessions going on in the same hall. Yes, Ellie?
I just want to add one thing, actually. What your question was, you're saying it's very difficult in a club, and I agree with that. But I think there's one key element which I like to use is building a bit of a culture. And what I mean by that is you start a training session together, meaning warm-ups or whatever you may do. But if you do something together at the beginning, then you start to build this culture of, okay, we're all going to work together. And sometimes you'll find that the ones that are not so interested, they might divert towards you, or they might say, you know what, it's not for me, I'm out, which is fine. It is what it is. But if you have one element, which is a bonding team element, then that can elevate the whole, the whole thing.
Yeah. And it's also difficult if you're a coach trying to make a living out of table tennis. You can't kind of say, oh, you know, you're not really, kind of drawing the line. You have to leave, you know. And also, no one likes to tell people they have to leave.
No, of course not.
So these are the kind of challenges we're up against. Anything more to add before I pass on to Andy, Gavin?
Oh, I think we've touched on most things. You know, it's a difficult one.
All right, Andy. Anything you'd like to add on that topic?
I think it's been mentioned by Ella and Gav that I think a coach really needs to adapt to the situation himself. And like Gav mentioned, if he's got the people there to be able to run two groups, then it does make it easier. And also, you can focus on the ones who want to do something, who want to improve. I mean, like Eli just mentioned there, you get if you do it as a team, it kind of adapts if you're doing with young ones, it kind of adapts their mentality towards, because table tennis is mainly a team thing, and if you can do things in a team, then it does bring you along. And if you, like I said, if you warm up in a team, if you do a team game at the end to try and get them, a coach can then pick out the players who are interested and want to move on, or the ones who just want to come for fun. Like you say, Rory, you always get someone who just wants to come along, have a couple of ends, and then go home. You've also got the one who wants to get the number one in England, wants to be playing for the national team.
I guess the kind of really keen ones would come from one-to-ones as well.
Yeah. And you can, from a coaching session, you can then adapt and take the ones who do want to progress as one-to-ones, which I'm sure all of us on here have done or tried to do in the past. So, but it is about, it's not just about the player, it's about the coach adapting to the situation and trying to be flexible. You do go along with a routine sometimes you get there and you realise, actually, this routine's not going to work. I was coaching at a club just recently, and there was probably 15 kids on my session. Say 5 of them wanted to improve. 10 of them just wanted to come along and talk to their mates and have a little game of table tennis because their mates are there playing table tennis. Yeah. So you've got to work around that and try and get them involved. But I don't think you can force anyone into it, because if you try and push that onto them and change their mentality too much, it can push them away.
Yeah, they've got to feel like it's partly their decision as well.
Yeah. And with you saying about a diary and things like that, I think if you get a player for a couple hours a week, you can't make their diary, because they could be being coached by you for 2 hours, by me for 2 hours, by Gav for another 2 hours, and then every one of us will have a different, slightly different perspective on what you need to work on, how, and the kid doesn't know whether they're coming or going. So I think it is up to them to write down what they need to work on and take it round with them if they've got different coaches.
Just quick question back to Gav again. You mentioned about having kind of almost 2 sessions going on at the same time. Would you still do that, say, if there were 8 kids and 1 coach? And so would you still maybe split it into 4 who were kind of keen and 4 who were just, in a different level? Or
I don't have a definite answer for that. I can't say yes I would or no I wouldn't. I think in certain situations I definitely would, and in certain situations I wouldn't. And again, I'm not trying to cop out of that question, but I think every scenario you have to evaluate as a coach, and feel what's going to work in that moment. And I think that's probably the biggest key. If I separate it 1 week, I can't separate it every single week. If I see these kids, they want to be part of a group, no matter if 4 of the kids want to be in the Irish or the English or whatever team, I can't separate them every week. They have to all feel part of the same group and the same thing if they're my only 8 kids. So I think it's...
Say if there was a big gap, there were 4 at the same level and 4 at the same level, would you get them training together sometimes, or would you always keep them apart? Or
Oh, absolutely, mix them in. The only way for those 4 guys who are behind to improve is to play with those guys. They have to get the table time. I was given a lot of table time by my elder statesmen when I was in my club, and now I've done it through my years, always giving time back to the youngers, and I will continue to make younger players play with weaker or it doesn't matter if they're older or younger. If a younger can play with an older, weaker player, no problem, and help them to come along. And that could be the spark for one of those guys who maybe just wants fun, to realise that he has a little bit more than he thinks, or maybe that he likes table tennis more than he thinks, and he can bring himself on. And I want to get to that guy's level. Actually, I'm not 10 million miles away.
Okay, good. Now we're going to hear from Will now. It's coming at it from a different perspective. So I'll kind of give a quick kind of background. So correct me if I'm wrong, Will, but you went to coaching sessions regularly up to the age of approximately 15. And then you...
Yeah, 15, 16.
15 or 16. You stopped coming to group coaching at that point. And you certainly stopped coming to my sessions, whether you did some sessions in Blades or some other club at a later stage. But you have actually qualified as a coach yourself, haven't you?
Yeah, I got my level 1 last year.
Yeah. And you've done a bit of assisting at another club other than mine.
This last year.
Yeah, for about another year. So approach the question from a player's perspective, in terms of motivating different ability levels and different motivation levels of the players. What are your thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's kind of avoiding the question, but I don't think enough juniors are encouraged to go to social sessions, because not everyone wants to be coached to like county national players. The people that just want to play for fun, you might as well, because it always seems to be just adults at the social sessions and the occasional junior. Whereas if you're just going to talk with your friends and just have like a good time, it makes more sense to go to a social session than be coached and mucked around there. And that's first of all.
Okay, let me just quickly respond to that in terms of my club. My club doesn't have social sessions. I'm interested in coaching players who are improving and getting to the next level. I have tried running just open practice sessions, and I haven't had any interest, so I haven't pursued it. There's another club in Horsham which has social sessions as well as coaching sessions and practice sessions. So yeah, just to kind of give a bit of background on that. I wouldn't have a lot of interest in running social sessions myself. Anyway, carry on, Will.
Yeah, I think in sessions, obviously, you want to try and pair up the right people who've got the same motivation and standards to get the most out of it. I think no top player wants to be turning up with someone who's just mucking around and just wants to play games, to be honest. But even so, you can almost, if someone just wants to play games, the other person can still be practicing stuff, just they don't have to take it as competitively. That sort of makes sense. So different aims, but you can still pair up together.
You could have two people playing against each other with different motivations, as long as
yes. So one person might want to be working on like their short game, whereas the other person just wants a match. So if the person just serves short and goes from that, they're kind of both getting stuff out of it.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good point. Anything else you'd like to add on that before we move on?
I think most of the points have been covered, to be honest.
Okay,
I want to add one thing.
Yeah, Ali,
go ahead. This is also important. What you said is right. You said that I want to have coaching sessions, and that is also correct. You need to know what your niche is or what your expertise is, and then you cater for that. Now, like I said before, you can't cater for everyone. So if you're saying I want to be a high performance club of training, then you need to say, okay, this is what it is. And the people that come in through the doors know what they're expecting. That's also very, very important. But if you're just going, oh, well, we're just a club that anyone can turn up and we can play a little bit or we can train, then people are confused. You know, you go to an Apple shop to buy an iPhone or an iMac or a Mac. You see what I'm saying? So you don't go to a newsagent to buy an Apple Watch or whatever. So you need to be a bit more precise as to what you're providing, and people know what they're getting into.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So I do advertise my sessions as coaching sessions. They're never advertised as practice sessions or social sessions.
Okay, so what does that mean, coaching sessions? You know, that's so vague. Well, is that for beginners, for adults, for disabled, for elite? What is it for?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's different levels. I mean, I used to have different sessions that had beginners and intermediate, advanced. The club numbers have gone down a bit, so we've just got one kind of session at the moment. Well, 3 times a week, but it's not divided into different ability groups because the numbers are too small. But I would assume that people would know that coaching means improving yourself as opposed to just turning up and having.
But that's what you would assume. What about from the outside, the players? If I saw someone advertising coaching session, I wouldn't quite understand that. It would be like, okay, so what does that mean? Is that going to cater for my needs? Is it for elite player? For me personally, I could be completely wrong. Will, you're more of a player. Maybe you can say I'm wrong, but from all the players I've ever worked with, I've always made it very, precise as to what I'm catering for. So, for example, say, right, we're going to be working on footwork, high intensity footwork, or something. So they know precisely what they're coming in for. Or I'm only going to be working with international players. So again, only international players know that that's catering for them.
There's only so much you can put on a flyer, though, or
I think if you're trying to make it a generic term, Rory, I think actually Ellie's right, because this is something I've fallen into the trap of, and I don't like using this word, but I think if you wanted to use a generic word, lessons is better than coaching. At least people then feel like it's some form of teaching. I'm going to be taught table tennis. If you get it, what a guitar lesson is, don't you? You're going to go and learn how to play guitar. So if you have a table tennis lesson, you're going to go and learn how to play table tennis, whatever level you may be at. And I've only realized that because some players that I coach ask me, am I free to do lessons? And I never ever used or liked that word, but now I'm starting to use it because
that's cool. But yeah, good point. Yeah,
very good.
That's a good observation. Okay, good. Nice discussion so far. So the second question is, it's a kind of a bit about time management. Again, going back to my own club, I have a 2-hour session. I have 3 a week, but most of the players, I think there's only one player that comes more than once a week. Most of the players I'm seeing just 2 hours a week. They play table tennis once a week. They don't play at any other stage during the week. They just play for those 2 hours. Some of them might play in league, but not many of them. Most of them are literally playing 2 hours a week. Now, do you kind of use up 15 minutes at the beginning for a warm-up, 15 minutes at the end for a cool down, which leaves you with only an hour and a half of table tennis, and actually probably less than that because they have a bit of a break in the middle? Yeah, that was just my kind of question. So if I start that one, I'll give it to Gavin this time.
Nice. Okay. I think actually my answer is going to be brief enough, I think, for once. If I was coaching a group of kids, I think it depends what my goals are. If I'm running a session in my club and I want my kids to become real players, then of course they have to learn from the ground up, base level. You warm up. We are a real sport. We are a professional sport. You warm up, you cool down, you stretch, you do all these things. If you neglect them in order just to make them better at the start to get more table time, they're not learning the way to be a real table tennis player. You know, you can't become a good table tennis player without warming up your body and cooling down your body and stretching. As we go through the levels, you know, Of course you can get away with it for a long time.
If they're just once a week, they're probably not going to be a top player anyway.
Yeah, okay, but then again, that's down to what your goals are as a coach, and I think Ellie touched on it in the last discussion. You know, I think your goal as a coach is to have a good club with good players, and that is the way to teach how to become good players. If you are convinced that we are going to be a hobby table tennis club and this is going to be a hobby table tennis session, this is my hobby session, then okay, it's less important. Go on, warm up your bodies, running around hitting the balls. Fair enough. But so I think it's essential for kids anyway. And I think if you move into adults or more social adults, then okay, that's up to them. That is, they know their bodies. That's their own decision what they do in terms of warm up. Even when I was towards the end of my time with the national team in Ireland, I didn't do the generic warm up that the rest of the guys were doing. I did what suited my body and what I wanted to do. So I think that's more or less my point.
Yeah, I can totally see your point. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Personally, I basically don't do any warm-ups at all or cool downs, and I haven't ever done in my 20 years of coaching. Well, I mean, I do it for a training camp. If I'm doing a 4 or 5 hour session, of course, I'll do it. For a 2 hour session where you're seeing most of the people just those 2 hours for the entire week and they're not playing, I'll be honest, I don't. If they wanted to come early or do their own warm-up before or after the session, that's up to them. But I will say that in the 20 years I've been coaching, nobody has ever injured themselves through not warming up or cooling down. And I've been playing myself 28 years, and very few times within those 28 years of playing, and I do play a lot, very few times have I done a warm-up or any stretching or anything like that. So
are you saying it's irrelevant?
I'm not saying that. I think if you're going to be, I think maybe when you get to a certain level, it becomes more important. But up to my kind of level, I'm not convinced of the benefit of it.
Well, sports science would disagree, just to say. Like, I don't believe that you can't have a small percentage difference in your performance if you warm up or not. Yeah,
I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying what my opinion on it is, and I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying that what I've done and what I've observed over the years.
I just wanted to get a few daggers flying here, Rory, get a bit of back and forth.
It's what we want. What discussion? I mean, I'm being honest and maybe too honest, but I'm just giving my view as a club coach who has produced county players, and a few then have gone on to become national or even international players. But majority of players I've coached have just been club players and maybe up to county level. So anyway, Ellie, I'll let you have your say on this one.
Okay, so warm up and cool down. It's scientific, it's factual, it does have benefits. Now I get what you're saying. You know, you can get away with it and stuff, but I guarantee if you did it, your results would be slightly better. It's all about little marginal gains. So it's down to you as to what culture are you looking to implement. And this is, for me, it's an embarrassment when I go across the country in England to host training days or training camps, and I see exactly like you say, almost 99% of people don't warm up. It pains me because everywhere I go outside of England, in Europe and the world now, everyone warms up. Everywhere I go, they have a routine, a culture of warming up, and that sets the tone of what's to come and how they move forward. And really, it shows. Take away our top 3, top 4, which have trained in Europe. The rest of us, if you compare us to the rest of Europe and the other countries, we're very low. And that's one of the reasons. I'm not saying it's only the reason, but it's one of the reasons. And we have got to start to change that culture. And I try, everywhere I go, I always try and emphasize how important it is for us to warm up, to prepare mentally, and to be more professional. Like Gav said, this is a professional sport. It's an Olympic sport, but we treat it as if it's a Mickey Mouse sport and we expect to have super results. It's not going to happen. So if I were you, what I would do, yes, you have your 2-hour session. I would turn up 10, 15 minutes before the training session. I would tell everyone to turn up, and I would warm them up before the open session. That's me personally, but that's
and somebody else suggested get the players to do their own warm-ups before the session started.
Also possible, yeah, but they probably won't. But if you're there,
you won't,
90% of them will do it.
Yeah.
And then after a while, you can say, okay, guys, I'm going to leave you to it. And you'll see that many of them will come on their own.
Yeah, it's all about, for me, use of the time. I mean, I know if I personally, say I had an hour to practice with somebody, I wouldn't be interested in wasting like a half an hour of that warming up and cooling down for myself personally, or even if it was a 2-hour session, I wouldn't. And I know if the players are only playing 2 hours a week, to reduce it down to an hour and a half, okay, there's going to be benefits from warming up and like you say, but would they be as much as adding an extra half an hour of table tennis to people who only play an hour? An extra half an hour. But anyway, yeah, that I've got noted your comments. Andy, I'll move on to you on this same topic.
I think, like Gav said, it's if you've got a group of kids, it is very important to get them warming up. When I was a junior, I didn't warm up. I used to think it was stupid. Why do I need to warm up? Only 16. I'm not gonna get injured. Now I'm a vet. It's a different story. Before a tournament, I'm always stretching. I'm always walking around, making sure that I'm nice and loose, ready for when I go on the table. Rory, you're obviously a lot fitter than me, so you don't need to warm up. I find it does. I get to a table, now that I'm a vet, I get to a table, I've done some stretches, I've done a little run around outside. I feel ready to move, ready to play. Whereas if I didn't warm up, I would probably be flat. And it would take us a few points to get going before.
So Andy, you've got some injuries. Do you attribute those injuries to not warming up when you were younger at all? Or?
One of my injuries happened a few years ago with my knee, which has affected both my knees. I don't know whether that's because when I was younger I didn't warm up, but when I was younger, I used to think I looked stupid. I didn't have a coach that would say, right, okay, come to the session, you'll do this warm-up, you'll do that warm-up. It's a professional sport. Like Gavin, Eli are saying.
Yeah, I never had any coaching when I was a kid, so I never got into that kind of culture of
yeah, it's a culture. And if you get the kids believing and thinking, actually, I'm not daft, and this is an Olympic sport. You know, you watch football every week. Everyone watches football. What do the players do for half an hour before a match? They're out on the pitch warming up. You wouldn't see a professional footballer turning up to a football match and just going straight on for 90 minutes.
The football is more intensive on the body, and you're more likely to get an injury from football than table tennis.
Well, I don't know. It's not as quick as table tennis.
At the professional level, I would say table tennis is just as physically enduring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going from personal experience. I've never.
Yeah, but you're not a professional, Rory.
No, I'm not saying. No, I'm not. Okay, not professional.
But of course, if your body is accustomed to table dance, so of course it's easier for you to play table dance than go out and play 90 minutes of football. If I went out and played 90 minutes of football, I'd probably do my hamstring and break my back. But if that was my job, it would be equally as physically demanding. You know, your body gets certain muscles get accustomed to certain things. So it's no way you can say or I can say which is more or less. You know.
Yeah. Okay, Will, we'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, just quickly on that last bit though, you could say football's a lot more contact in table tennis. You're not going to have someone slide tackle you around the other side of the table, are you?
Very
so there's a lot more external factors.
Possibly happened in vets table tennis.
So what would give us your view on the topic? Of
the
time management of whether you
warm-ups can get you in the right mindset. I think if you don't warm up and just go in, you might be a bit too relaxed. I think in terms of the time management, trying to make it a bit more table tennis specific, so don't just jog around the hall for 5 minutes, because you don't jog in table tennis, do you? So more like side steps around the table. I don't know.
Shadow play. When I have the
warm-ups,
one of the things I've done is shadow play, getting people to actually do table strokes, like in-out footwork. Yes, Andy?
I think, Rory, depending on the time that you've got, depends on the time that you spend warming up. So if you've only got an hour, spend 10 minutes, 5 minutes. If you've got 2 hours, then drag it on a bit. But I think it is very important, especially for kids, gets them in the right frame of mind.
So, Will, you've been in my sessions. What would you think? It would have been more beneficial to add in more warm-ups and cool-downs?
I think cool-down's probably more your call, because the session's after. But I think before, just a quick 5 minute, get the body moving. And anyway, you don't have to starting with top table is probably not a good idea, but just starting with nice and easy and work your body into it. Jog to get the ball, stretch between picking the ball up and stuff.
Yeah.
You can kind of work it into doing your shots. Like, of course, if you try and hit like 3-point forehands like straight off, you probably are going to get injured. But if you're just playing backhand to backhand, jog to pick the ball up, stretch while your opponent's getting the ball, you can kind of work it in, I think.
So maybe a bit of a compromise, maybe 5 minute warm up and then a bit of a light table knock up before you kind of get into the kind of more, and then maybe a regular drill and then moving on to irregular and then maybe match play towards the end. So you're kind of working.
Yeah, so gradually progress it as you warm up, I think.